Hello.
Hey, good to hear from you.
How are you? Long time no chat.
I know it's been very long, so long.
Yeah, understood. Oh no, I'm excited. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here. Sorry I had to
Yes,
unhook my mic.
no worries. Yep. Um, yeah, so we should have a great speaker here tonight. I'm very excited for it. Um,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
read up on the guy. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And next month too, the whole Nessus thing is such a nightmare. Tenable is such a nightmare for most places.
Right. Yeah.
So that's exciting. Well, I'll mute out and let you do your thing, but thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, how are you? Welcome. Glad to have you here. Um, we're just kind of chatting, so feel free to join in if you want.
Hi, ET.
Hey, glad to see you. All right, our speaker should be joining now. Oh, Tipsy's coming. Hey, how are you? Can you hear us?
Loud and clear.
Hey, good to see you, Tipsy.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Waiting for
Won-
my shift to end. I was gonna start more training, but if I did, it would take me an hour and I don't want to stay on for that long afterwards.
Yeah. Josh, are you able to hear us? Okay. Yeah. Hmm. We got Joshua squared. Hey, FedEx. There you go. All right. Can you hear us now?
I absolutely can.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So let me make you a host so that you can do all of the things to manage the meeting that you need to. All right. Oh, I think now are you now the one that adds people to the room? I think I may have passed that on to you. Sorry. I'm learning.
It's all good.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Several people joining in at once, so glad to have y'all. Oh, hey, Caden. I love the background you've got.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, this is my backup for when the other ones are down.
Yeah. Very nice. So, yeah, we got a few more minutes. I think we're gonna have a few more people joining us as well. Oh, we've got another one with a really cool background. Look at Ray. Star Wars. Hi. Very cool.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. So Tipsy, is that You've got BSides Nashville in the background there?
Yeah, I stole the floor sticker.
Oh, nice. I
Yeah.
stole the creator stage ready room.
Shit,
Yeah.
you beat me. Damn it. I wanted to get something from the somewhere at DEF CON and I completely spaced as I was leaving. I was too like focused on trying to get the AI versus the giant cut out of the dude's head. I wanted to take it home, but by the time I was looking for it, I had already wasted so much time. So I was like, shit, I gotta go.
Yeah. This thing here, I brought it. It was huge, and of course would not fit into my suitcase. And so I had to cut off the top and the bottom, and then like make slits into it so it would fold down into my suitcase. It was huge.
Time for you to assemble it back together into the ultimate sign and then hang it up on the wall. Get like a
Right.
nice elaborate frame for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Welcome, Steve. Glad to have you. Thanks for joining us. Yep. Welcome, Mike. Glad you could join us from the Space Coast.
Space Ghost.
Yeah. So, Joshua, do you want to start like right at 8, or you want to give people a few minutes after?
I am Semper Gumby. Whatever you guys want, that's what I will do.
Okay. I like that separate Gumby.
Always flexible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think probably just starting at the top of the hour. That'd be
Okay.
good. Hey, hi Mike, how's it going? Hello,
Great.
James. All right, I'll go ahead and mute out so you can start when it's ready.
Oh no, don't mute anyone. I want them to be able to interrupt.
Oh, no, I was saying I'll mute out
No.
so that I'm not like putting noise over you while you're talking. But yeah, I think everybody can just unmute if they have questions whenever they're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go Tulane. Screw LSU. Just saying.
I mean, I'm a roll wave guy, not a go Tigers. As go Tigers.
As soon as I saw that, I was like, a man after my own heart, a fellow New Orleanian. Thank God.
Yeah, I told Joshua I need to go to the New Orleans BSides. They were hosting it at the same time as the Jazz Festival. I'm
Yes.
like, I gotta
Jazz
go.
Fest is insane.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's-
very, very excited for that.
It's usually on the Wednesday between the 2 weekends of Jazz Fest. So you come in for Jazz Fest over the weekend. You can do a little worky thing, do the cybersecurity thing, and then continue with Jazz Fest and have plenty of time to hit up Antone's and Mother's and go see the Museum of Death.
Museum of
Cool.
Death is the best part. I haven't been home in so long.
All right. I'll let you take it away, Joshua.
All right. So we got a few more people joining. This is going to be super informal. I have some slides just so you guys have something to look at other than my face. My face is kind of ugly. The slides at least have something pretty to look at. This is a pretty straightforward talk. I've been doing cybersecurity for a really, really long time, and I have some strong opinions on it. One of the things I am known for is I'm the unpopular opinion guy, if you follow LinkedIn. So take that as a caveat. Standard disclaimer, anything I say here is mine and mine alone opinion, is not the opinion of any past employer, organization that I belong to, past, present, or future. This is just an old guy ranting into the world on what he thinks wrong with the internet and cybersecurity as a whole. So why am I here? Well, I am indeed the unpopular opinion guy, trademarked. Yes, it is actually trademarked. I am a professor of cybersecurity at Tulane University, 25 plus years in cybersecurity, ranging from Air Force, GDIT, AT&T, Bose, and now with a company based out of Jacksonville, Florida called Quadrant Security. I've done pretty much everything you can think of in the space of cybersecurity and IT. Started off doing basic help desk type stuff, rolled into routing and switching servers, pen tests, policy, doing kind of all the cool things that you want to do. Did some really cool work with the RAND Institute on doing cyber attack to kinetic effect, where I did a cyber attack that turned the AC off to a server room that forced the Air Force to completely relocate all bomber operations globally for about 4 hours. So had a real world event happened during that 4 hour period, they had no way to do bomber command and control because they had an internet facing port open, and I turned off AC. Weird stuff like that. Focus areas for me is obviously cloud, cybersecurity, cloud, GRC, all kinds of things in the engineering space. I want this to be super conversational. So if I say something and you want to kind of double click on it, just unmute and talk. I'm not super, formal on that type of stuff. I've done speaking at RSA, at BlackHat, DEF CON groups, BSides all over, across the board. I'm actually in Colorado. That's why I'm in a hotel room. I'm speaking at the BSides here in Colorado Springs on Saturday. Just came from Scottsdale speaking at a conference there. So a little bit all over the place. I hold 90 some certifications, co-wrote 2 of those, co-authored a book, technical editor, a couple books, including 1 textbook. So kind of give you the background of what kind of gives me any degree of authority to speak on any of these subjects. Hopefully that sets the stage of where I'm coming from a background perspective. Cool? Cool. So what we're going to talk about is what I think are the top 7 things wrong in cybersecurity. There's a lot of things wrong in cybersecurity. There's no way around it. Cybersecurity is absolutely huge, and we tend to do things where we've cobbled a lot of stuff together out of get something function first and then add security later, and that causes a lot of problems. So this is what I've kind of narrowed down over my last 25 years of career of the top things that have caused issues in the cybersecurity space. If you disagree with me, absolutely feel free to voice that opinion. I am absolutely stoked to have some dissenting thoughts. So the first things first. Number 1, we absolutely 100% suck at doing all the basics for cybersecurity. I talked to a whole lot of organizations, I've done consulting work, gone in, and one of the first questions I always ask is, where's your CMDB? Do you have one? And normally I get a blank stare. And those who do say they have a CMDB, I'm like, okay, is it actually accurate? And then I usually get the blank stare of, well, no, not really. So the very first thing in cybersecurity is you have to know what you're protecting. And for the vast majority of organizations, once you get above typically that 50-person line, they literally have no clue what they have as far as assets. Even in small organizations, they know they have stuff, but they don't know any specifics about it. And you tend to get a lot of shadow IT sneaking around where, there are things that you don't know formally exist. Since the invention of the cloud, it is super, super easy for somebody to take their corporate credit card and go ahead and just buy services. Don't get it approved by anybody. Don't do anything as far as vetting the technology or how it's going to connect in. They just swipe a card, and now we have a cloud service that nobody knows about that has your critical data in it. One of the other things that is, it's so basic, it's almost laughable, because we have Patch Tuesday, right? Everybody knows second Tuesday of the month, Patch Tuesday, followed by Exploit Wednesday. But when you look at the metrics, the mean time to respond and remediate even criticals and highs is typically 2 months. That's 2 months that most organizations are highly vulnerable. And according to a 2022 study, the average time to identify a breach is 212 days. Let that sink in for a minute. What's that?
A CMDB, that is a content management database.
Configuration management database. It's the listing of all your assets and what services and products you have running on them, so you know what is what in your organization.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. And then on top of that, when you take, that average of 120 or 112 days to identify a breach, then you tack on another 75 days to actually contain the breach. So that's 287 days, nearly a year that your organization has been breached before you actually have it fully contained. And what's truly interesting about that is that a lot of those major breaches aren't even addressing those critical and high vulnerabilities that are out there. They're leveraging those medium and lows and daisy chaining them together. So when you kind of look at that from a perspective, the things that people are focusing on patching, that they're not doing a great job patching of, aren't even the things that folks are using to get into organizations. And then if you look at kind of the statistics, 60% of all data breaches across the last 10 years have involved unpatched vulnerabilities. You think of all kind of the big ones, the Experian breach, unpatched vulnerability. It's truly kind of amazing that these are very, very simple things. Think back to 2017 when WannaCry was massively all over the world. The stats right now is 1 in 4 companies are still vulnerable to WannaCry. How is that even a thing? It is because we truly suck at the basics. Device hardening. Largely, and I've been doing this again for a while, device hardening, we know that it's important. We know what should be done, but it's really hard. It's hard to manage at scale. So what we get is lots of devices out there running multiple different versions of the same thing, having capabilities enabled that don't need to be enabled, Linux servers that have LDAP enabled that aren't doing anything to do with LDAP. You have Windows servers that allow you to escalate privileges because you have default accounts enabled. Things of that nature that are very, very easy fixes on the individual box scale, but doing them at scale is kind of hard. Now, there are tools now that make it a little bit easier, but that's always been kind of one of those things of, well, we'll get to it eventually. Well, it's been, 25 years of my career, and it was a get to it eventually when I started my career. So I would venture to say that's been a thing for like the last 50 years of we'll get to it eventually. When is eventually? One of the other things that we really suck at is separation of duties. We tend to, heap things onto people left and right. You get promoted from one job to another, and do they ever take your rights away from the previous role? Maybe. I would say that most organizations, they don't. And that's because that's what I've seen over and over again, where, somebody gets promoted and they still have all the accesses of the job they previously held, whether it was really, germane to that position or not. And that kind of leads you to kind of a couple different things. Think about it from things like the banking industry requires mandatory vacations. And typically that mandatory vacation is for a period of no less than 1 contiguous week. And they do that because it's kind of that smoke test of both separation of duties. Do we have the appropriate people to cover down on things if we have separation of the duties done? But then it also allows for a bit of kind of insider threat kind of investigation. It's really easy to cover up something if you're only off 1 day at a time. The odds of somebody else finding that is pretty small. When you start taking time in larger chunks, it makes it harder to cover that up long term. when you're specifically not there to cover your tracks. And this is why, highly regulated industries require people with privileged accesses to do mandatory vacation. So there is the opportunity to see those insider threat options. One of the other key items is, as someone who's worked in a SOC, you really want to have access to all the tools. You want to be able to go look at everything and touch everything. But is that really a good idea? There should be a clear delineation between the watchers and the doers. If the person who is the watcher has the ability to do all the things and all the ability to hide within the watching, so the logging space, to hide those bad actions, what's the point of having watchers versus doers? It really becomes kind of very muddled. All right. So from that perspective, truly having separation of the duties and not getting over provision on things. Sometimes it makes things a little slower, but like anything else in cybersecurity, it's the easier it is, the less secure it is. The harder it is, the more secure it is. And it's finding that balance between those two very distinct things that gives you kind of that just right level of security, finding your kind of Goldilocks zones. Some of the other key things that we really suck at the basic level is password management. How good is your secrets management or your service accounts? I've seen organizations where I've gone in and done audits and their service account passwords have never been changed, ever. We're talking 10, 15 years of having the same password. And they're not terribly complex passwords. They're, they're the appropriate generated password from 10 to 15 years ago. So like 8 to 12 characters of random gibberish. But it's so easy to break those. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone on to organizations' internal SharePoint sites or doing just kind of walk around buildings and see files clearly labeled passwords with usernames and passwords. See the sticky note on a computer with the login information. Look underneath the keyboard and see all the sticky notes, or open the drawer and it's all there. And you see that on things like share drives and SharePoints that are just absolutely wild, that you'd have all this out there, because the management of those isn't done very well either. So truly, as a whole, we truly suck kind of at the basics. Now, how do we fix that? Well, it kind of goes back to the idea of, we've got to really focus on those high impact items. And unfortunately, things that are hard tend to slip off that list because they're not those easy check marks. So it comes back to prioritizing things that are going to have the most needle moving to a secure environment with the least amount of impact to the folks that have to do all the work. So number 2, we truly do not understand business. Leaders in cybersecurity have largely been picked because they're really, really smart technicians. They understand the technology, they understand the technology stack, but they really suck at articulating why that matters. I use the phrase converting bits and bytes into dollars and cents. Why does cybersecurity matter outside of it's a potential checkbox of compliance because we're a publicly traded organization, or we deal with credit cards, or any number of regulatory requirements? We also tend to not understand that cybersecurity as a whole exists to support and drive the business. Whatever your business is, whether you're a state or local government agency where your business is providing services to your constituents, or you're a true business where you're providing services to individual customers, or you're a business to business organization where you're providing services to another business, cybersecurity exists solely to enable that capability. So the number one thing that CISOs can do, and cybersecurity professionals up and down the chain, is understand the business and how cybersecurity integrates into that, and how we show business value of cybersecurity. One of the easiest things I talk about when you go to talk to a board is I can talk about things like, we need to have 4 nines or 5 nines uptime. And I can tell you that we have 4 nines and we need 5 nines. And this is what the cost difference is. And that means absolutely nothing to somebody who is not in IT or cybersecurity. And if I tell you that the difference between that time is this specific amount of downtime, again, that means nothing. But when I tell you the difference between 5 nines and 4 nines is roughly $3,600 monthly in revenue generating income, magically the light turns on and they all get it. They go, oh, okay, you're affecting our revenue stream. That's important. They don't need to understand that what the 5 nines or 4 9 means. They need to understand what the implementation is to that business. And truly, you have to look at it from the perspective of, look at how things are going to be done from the business perspective. The average amount of money lost by business as a result of cyber crimes in 2023 was $1.3 million. Now, if you are a large Fortune 500, yeah, $1.3 million is probably not a whole lot of money. If you are an SMB, and particularly a below the middle line SMB, $1.3 million is a shut the door, lock it, and we're out of business type event. So much so that if you are an SMB and you are hit with a cybersecurity incident, the likelihood of you closing your doors within 6 months is 50%. It's that big a deal. And articulating those points to your organization becomes really how you translate the business into the bits and bytes. Saw a comment. And to Cyber Greg's point, yes, it ties into ITIL, Project Plus, PMP, CISP, all of those will kind of drive that it's all about the business. If we were going to talk real numbers, there's a report that predicts cybersecurity costs for cybercrime will reach $9.5 trillion this year and exceed $10.5 trillion next year. Those are just astronomical numbers. When you look at nearly half of all companies now pay or have a policy to pay ransomware with security threats, 13% increase over last year. Like, organizations are just going, we're just going to pay now. It's easier for us to pay than it is for us to try to block and tackle, so to speak, or do good cybersecurity practice. Even things like cybersecurity insurance, when looking at it from the perspective of 10 years ago to today, 10 years ago, cybersecurity underwriters were writing policies, not really knowing what they're doing. They've had 10 years of data and they have a very, very good idea of actuary tables for cybersecurity. And cybersecurity insurance is getting more expensive and harder to get because they're actually looking at you to do the right thing all the time. Last year, there was a lawsuit. It was settled out of court, so we don't have case law on it yet. But State Farm was suing one of the insured organizations that had a breach, and they were breached because they did not have MFA enforced. On the questionnaire, they said they had MFA enabled. Well, it's a bit of semantics, but MFA enabled versus MFA enforced are very, very different things. And the insurance company tried to say that when they said they had it enabled, they were really asking that if it was enforced. Well, obviously that went out and was settled out of court, but those are the kind of things that we're going to see is they're going to get very nitty gritty on those. When you answer yes to this question, what did that really mean? And they will look for ways not to pay. And then if you even look at cybersecurity insurance, look at the disclaimers and the kind of lined items that they have on it. If you are attacked, on many policies, it's written to where if it's a nation state attacker, so we're talking, China, Russia, any of the big five, they won't pay because that's considered nation state activity and is not part of cyber crime. So you might have that false sense of security because you don't understand the business piece of the organization. So it really comes down to, what's the risk? And 45% of experts in cyber incidents are now the most feared cause of business interruption over natural disasters and energy concerns. Obviously I live in Louisiana and we just had the kind of the scare with the hurricane coming through. Even natural disasters like that still are not ranked as the top thing anymore. Now they are cybersecurity actors. So some of the business people are starting to understand cybersecurity, but we're not doing our part to really understand business. I'm not saying go out and get an MBA. What I'm saying is that if you want to do very, very well in cybersecurity, talk to the folks that are in your organization that are running the lines of business, the other parts of the organization. The security office tends to be viewed as the office's no. And that in part is why things are so adversarial between us and other parts of the organization, because they want to do these cool, new, innovative things. And the first thing we say is no. And it's because we're security people. We're bred to believe that, if there's a way to breach it, we probably need to protect it. And that's absolutely true, but we also have to not stifle innovation to the point where we chokehold our business and eventually have no business, which means we have no cybersecurity. Number 3, people are still our biggest threat. I wish this was not the case. And frankly, it's going to be the case probably for the rest of our lifetimes. Depending on which report you read, 80% of all cyber attacks have a human element, human error. Whether it's things weren't patched because somebody didn't do their job, they didn't know they were supposed to do it. There was some social engineering involved. You have concerns where, particularly in industry, where people don't want to share knowledge. They want to be the smart guy in the room. They want to be the single person that knows how to do these things because they view it as job security. Well, when you have that, you also become, not only are you the single point of success, you're also the single point of failure. Looking at it from those perspectives, it becomes extremely important that we do the right things to educate people. And I'm not talking to you about doing phishing tests. I'm a proponent that phishing tests are the worst thing that cybersecurity professionals ever came up with. They're absolute trash. They do nothing but undermine the trust that your organization has with you because the game of got you. There are ways you could potentially leverage them appropriately, but out of 100 organizations, maybe one does it the right way, where they incentivize people who are doing the right thing rather than, smack the hand of the person who does the wrong thing. And let's be clear, you're still going to have the same person do the same thing. Bob in accounting is always going to click on, the free gift card for Starbucks. It's just going to be how it works. Whether you like it or not, that's just how that person is. And no amount of training or education is going to fix that. Nor are we doing it very well in that, we're not necessarily training everyone to what is important. Is Bob in accounting the same level of threat as the janitor who also has an email account, or the front desk secretary, or your president of the company secretary, or the president of the company? We're not doing true risk-based training because they each have a very, very different risk profile, but we send them all the exact same slideshow that says, here's 15 slides, go through this and answer this 10-question quiz, and then you're good for the rest of the year for training. That does nothing and doesn't look at the way people are risky. The person who is in county is inherently risky because they have access to money. The president of the company is going to be inherently risky because they're well known. Their name is on lots and lots of legal documents. They're easy to find who they are. They have a lot of responsibility, and theoretically, they have the ability to tell people to go do things like spend money. Ironically, what you'll also see is a lot of senior leaders have access to a lot of crap that they don't need. They'll have admin access to a bunch of things that they will never use, that they never have, but they want it because they're the boss. So getting over those pieces is kind of the hard part that we have to look at. And throwing more security at it isn't always the answer. One of the things I find most interesting is that the more you put security in that makes doing something hard, the quicker and faster people will find a way around it. I'll go very early in my career when you could configure Exchange to not allow zip files. And people very, very quickly learn that all I have to do is change it from a .zip to a .txt, and it'll go through just fine. And then you made it to where, you couldn't send attachments. Okay, I'll just go create a AOL or a Hotmail or a Gmail account and send it from there. Or I will upload it to this website that allows me to send things. Or I put a limit on how big of a file you can send. Well, I'll just go to whalemail.com and send it through there. The more you add to security and make things hard, the more people are going to find a way around it. Because one of the truest things in human society is that we are essentially lazy. It's not a bad thing. It is human nature. We want to do the least amount of work possible with the most result, because that's smart. And by adding these things in, unless we make them user-friendly, easy to use, and provide the right context of why that they need to be done, and that's the part that we tend to really miss, is why are we doing this? Why are we adding MFA? Why are we not just doing the SMS, code? Why do I have to download an app? Why am I purposely disabling, push notifications for my MFA alerts? And when you start explaining, we're not doing the SMS because that's highly, interceptable. Here's examples of real world where this has been done. We're not doing the push notification because here's all the examples of, MFA fatigue, where eventually you click OK just to make the alerts go away, instead of actually picking up the phone and calling your security office and saying, hey, there's something going on. Please stop this really quick. So taking that from that perspective, people are always going to be kind of our biggest risk. If we look back at the MGM breach last year, their first way in was social engineering a help desk person by getting them not to follow process and procedure. I took part in a pen test earlier this year, and we absolutely were not able to get into the organization through any technical means, but by calling the help desk and pretending to be a legitimate user, and then having that help desk technician bypass the security script that they have, where you need to get your boss to send a Teams message or a signed email to validate that this person's account is actually locked out to reset. They said, well, they can't do it right now. They're doing this other thing, but they happen to be sitting next to me. They can just authorize it over the phone. That absolutely was not the actual boss, but they made no attempt to verify that. So sure enough, this account gets re-enabled. And then you had issues where, that account would get flagged by the SOC for doing, things that didn't quite look right, possible malicious activity. So the account would get locked. And then the service desk would just go and unlock the account because the person called. They wouldn't look at the notes and say, notify the SOC before you re-enable this account. So these are all kind of people problems. They're not technical issues. Moving into kind of that technical thing is we absolutely have bright, shiny object syndrome. I define bright, shiny object syndrome is when we go to these conferences, no matter which one it is, you talk to 20 different vendors, and they all have this cool new idea of some new killer technology you have to have. And I am absolutely guilty of it too, just as much as anybody else. I see this cool technology and go, I need to have this. This is awesome. But do I really need it? Have I, instead of looking at new technology, have I looked at the technology stack I have? When I was doing visa work for the state of Texas, I would go into state agencies and I would look at their tech stack and look at what they wanted to buy. And I could usually find at least some instances where they were not using the tech stack they already had to the full capability that that particular tool had, or that they're licensing it to. And if I combine bits and pieces from different tools that they already had in place, they would have the capability that they wanted, just not in one kind of slick, shiny tool. So by looking at that, I'm like, okay, instead of spending $100,000 for this new tool, let's invest $20,000 in getting professional services training to help you learn how to use the tools you already have better. And then, oh, by the way, here are the real gaps that you have that weren't addressed by what you were looking at. And let's look at tooling that fixes your gaps versus whatever the cool, shiny thing is. You know, I have AI on there, and I absolutely teach a class on AI machine learning. But truly, it's one of those things, it's just a buzzword. If you look at most of these sales vendors, if you look at their sales deck from 2 years ago, you will see everywhere where it said machine learning or AI, it said machine learning. Because AI is the buzzword and the overall catch-all, where machine learning is just a particular type of AI. I'm a big proponent that AI is written in PowerPoint, and machine learning and large language models are written in Python, because AI just tends to be pure marketing and the other things are actual real code. So really it comes down to a point of we need to look at the tech stacks we have and get the right tech for the right time and for the right price. I use the analogy of, do I want to plow a cornfield with a Ferrari? A Ferrari is a really, really nice car. It's going to cost me a lot of money, but is it the right tool for the job? Not every organization needs the best in breed solution. It's just not cost effective. And it doesn't match their threat and risk profiles. You know, you can go with a, middle of the market solution that gets you everything that you need without paying an arm and a leg your firstborn and, a 10% share of your stock market. It's getting those right pieces and parts into your tech stack and having the right kind of mentality to realize I don't have to have the latest and greatest thing to still be safe and secure. I have to have a firm methodology where I understand what I have, how I'm going to protect it, where my gaps are, where my risks are, and what I'm doing to address those. And that doesn't mean going out and buying the latest new tool every year because you've seen it at BlackHat or RSA. Number 5, we are absolutely, totally, and utterly horrible at recruiting, hiring, and retention. I cannot tell you how much this has been a bane of my existence. One of the true facts out there, 70% of all actual job openings are not advertised anywhere. You have to know somebody. You have to be referred into those positions. If you set out and you are, the lone professional going out and doing everything on your own, trying to do everything on your own, you will miss most job opportunities. One of the interesting things is, while there is a legitimate shortage of technical jobs across the board. We also have a massive amount of people applying for all the jobs that are open. I'll give you an example. Last month, I had a job opening with my company that we posted, and we posted on LinkedIn. And within 1 hour, I had over 1,000 applications. Now, we were not using any of the ATS features to help sort and filter those. So I had to go through 1,000 applications to narrow it down to about a dozen or so. I would say probably 30% of those were probably bots, just based off of the data that I seen. The question was how many of those were bots posted by Mike. So I would say about 30%. But I've seen this over and over again. I talk with my peers all the time. And this is kind of par for the course. Anytime you post a job on one of these job boards, you're going to get, 500 to 1,000 applications, if not within the first hour, within the first day, particularly if that job list that it's remote or hybrid. And truly, a lot of those people that applied were not remotely qualified for the job. They missed massive amounts of the critical skills. And that's kind of one of those people are just applying to anything. You have people out there that will tell you, just apply for the job and see what happens. And while that is a, worthwhile message in the grand scheme of things, you kind of have to look at it at a more specific level, which kind of leads into my next point here of job descriptions are universally bad for particularly cybersecurity jobs. What you have a lot of is people went out and searched for a job that looked like the job that they want to hire for and copy and pasted their job description. Or it's a job description that HR, who has nothing to do with the actual job, they're not the hiring manager, nor the person who's actually going to be the manager. And it's just this provided very basic job description. And I'll give you an example from my career. When I moved to AT&T, the job description I had that was posted on the job I was told to go apply for had nothing to do with the actual role I was going to do. Not like one iota of, a single line item was remotely what I was going to be doing. It was a job description for a general consultant. I was going to go and be a SOC manager. And the word SOC was not even on the job description, but that was just the requisition they put it against. So we're really bad at writing job descriptions. My fix for this is that any job description should be able to be used 1 year later as your annual review. If there isn't anything on there that person actually needs to do and that they're going to do within the next year, it shouldn't be on the job description. And that helps you write better, more tailored job descriptions. That helps you get it to where you're getting the right people because they're at least you're advertising for the right thing. You're not getting people into an interview and then finding out that, they're not remotely what you want. We tend to put a lot of artificial barriers and what I term gatekeeping in these positions as well. You're applying for, as Greg here is saying, a SOC analyst role. Well, if you're an entry-level SOC analyst, I absolutely do not need you to have CISP, nor a master's degree, nor 10 years experience. Have I seen that job description out there? Absolutely. At least once a week. I see somebody who's asking for just completely asinine things. I'm one of those people where, again, goes back to build your job description on the job that they're actually going to do. If you're going to require a degree or certification, what's your business justification for that? If you're going to do, federal government, DOD, state government work, and they have a requirement that a person be certified, yes, put that in your job description. So you're going to work FedGov and they're requiring at least Security Plus, put that in there. Mark it as a hard requirement. If you're not in one of those situations, don't make it a hard requirement. You're losing out on a lot of talent because certifications are inherently expensive. And they don't really tell you a lot. One of my most famous rants is I spent a week going off on degrees, certifications, and experience. And I am a graduate level university professor, and I will tell you that degrees for a job matter absolutely zero. Not one iota will it actually help you do your job from a technical standpoint. And the reason why is just the basic academic process. Any material that you're getting presented to you is typically 5 years old by the time it gets presented in its first class, unless you're in a bleeding edge school. Well, if you're taking that as a college freshman, so by the time you're graduating college, that information is almost a decade old. Well, unless it's some foundational information, the decade-old data in cybersecurity is like 4 lifetimes. So that's not really going to help you. Now, where degrees are valuable is they tell me that you can do a long-term multi-part project with multiple levels of complications. They tell me that you're going to be able to likely work in a team, because I'm not really sure of any degree programs outside of ones like WGU, where you can get through undergraduate without having to do at least one team project, if not more than that. And that theoretically you should be able to, do a, adult level of writing where it's clear, it's concise, it's coherent. Ideally, you should develop some critical thinking skills, which in cybersecurity is absolutely critical. But will the degree absolutely tell me how well you're going to perform? No, not at all. The best analyst I've ever had worked for me. Their undergraduate degree was in marketing, which you can probably look at me and go, what the hell does marketing have to do with cybersecurity? And on the surface, I would totally agree with you until you look at, Mike, not just soft skills, hard skills. Look at the actual skills matrix for marketing, and then look at the skills matrix for social engineering. And when you compare those Venn diagrams, they're almost a complete overlap, because it's all about getting somebody to do the thing you want them to do. Marketing is typically buy a product, in cybersecurity, it is push the button, click the link, give me access to something I shouldn't have access to. The next best one was someone who had a degree in, I kid you not, 18th century French literature. And from a big perspective, that had no idea whatsoever of how that would tie into cybersecurity. But after hiring her, because she just completely blew away everything for the interview, it kind of got into that, okay, why? Like, how does this match up? And it became interesting when you go, well, when you're studying 18th century French literature, you're really deep diving and looking at kind of the peculiarities of different things and doing comparing and contrasting between different authors and different time periods. And then I started thinking about it, like, that truly sounds a lot like being, a SOC analyst. You're looking at what's different, what sticks out as slightly not the same as everything else. To the point where, people with soft skills make great folks in cybersecurity. I'm a huge proponent of ex-military, law enforcement, ex-medical. Any of those folks all make amazing cybersecurity folks, because ex-military, they're generally fire and forget. You tell them, go do this thing, and they will go figure out a way to do that thing. Law enforcement is just a different kind of investigation. It's the same structure, just they're doing it physically, where in cybersecurity, you're doing it digitally. Medical professionals are experts at triage, which is truly what that entry-level SOC analyst is doing. Is they're going, okay, what's bad? What's really bad? what needs to be addressed first. So there are all these kind of different areas that have all these transferable skills. So I'm one of those folks that if you look at from the big perspective, look at skills, individual skills, not necessarily backgrounds, and do those skills line up with the job description, not have you done this exact thing verbatim. Certifications, as noted, I said I had like 90 some and I co-authored 2 of them. Certifications are great because they tell me that you knew this material one day at some point in time. You knew enough of that information to pass the exam. Now, if you are a good practitioner, you will continue to maintain and grow that knowledge base, but I can't guarantee you that. I had a guy who interviewed for a job with me where they had a master's degree in information assurance with a focus on health, and they had a CISP. And I asked him a pretty basic question. Tell me a cybersecurity regulation, framework, or requirement that you're familiar with and how that would apply to the role that you're applying for. And I got the glazed over, dumbfounded stare, which was truly, dumbfounding for me, because for their master's degree in information assurance, that's 50% of the material. And for their CISP, that is 29% of the material. So they have seen this material and should have at least been able to rattle off NIST, SOC 2, SOX, GLIBA, whether you're going to do HIPAA, high tech, any one of these numerous standards are out there, GDRP. And particularly was disturbing was that he had a focus on health for his master's program, and he couldn't tell me HIPAA or high tech. So what does that tell me about his degree and certification? Well, he was probably, a what I call binge and purge, force feed all the information in, get through the class, and then as soon as you're done, chuck it out the window. Never to be seen or heard from again. And even looking at experience, not all experience is the same. I was hiring for a Tenable engineer, and I had 2 guys who their resumes made it to the end. And I was looking for, and I used a rough estimate of 5 years experience just to put a gauge on what we wanted. And the one person had worked for DoD. They were a 10-year, vulnerability scanning. Had 10 years experience in DoD. So I asked the question 3 different ways. I even gave examples. And when I said HIPAA and high tech, he was like, I wasn't really sure how those would apply to this, and couldn't explain what he thought HIPAA and high tech were. It was really bad. So back to my Tenable engineers. So the one guy was 10 years, worked for DoD, built himself as a Tenable SME. Another guy who had only been doing it for 2 years also claimed to be a Tenable SME. And the guy for 10 years, when we actually interviewed him, he worked at base level, and his 10 years experience, in my opinion, was really 1 year experience for a total of 10 years. All he was really doing was running remediation scans and making sure that the pre-built reports ran on the schedule. And if they didn't run, to troubleshoot it and restart them. Very, very basic. Now, compare that to the guy who had 2 years experience. Now, granted, it was only 2 years, but in that 2-year time frame, he had built out 4 complete environments from bare metal, stall, build out custom scanning policies, custom compliance scans for things that Tenable didn't have. One in particular was the New York State Social Security health system compliance requirements that Tenable just didn't have, unlike your typical NIST or DISA STIGs that are already built in. but he had done 4 of those. Now, I would argue that he's easily had 10 years experience in that 2-year time frame from the amount of work and things that he had to do. So all experience isn't equal. So you have to really kind of dig in and figure out, well, what does that really mean? So looking at that from those perspectives, kind of figure out what's good and what's bad. My biggest gripe in all of cybersecurity, compliance is not equal to security. Never has been, never will be. They are not remotely the same thing. If I was to link them together in some way, I would say that compliance is your starting point, not your finish line. Because compliance is always going to be typically anywhere from 2 to 10 years behind what the modern security landscape is. By the time it works its way through the wickets of that compliance organization, whether it be DoD, DISA, FedGov, EU, CIS, insert whatever organization you want here, it's going to be several years behind the curve. So to think that compliance equals security is absolutely wrong. Compliance is compliance. You are meeting mandatory requirements that are minimum requirements. When you talk to your organizations, it is important to emphasize that this is the minimum that we have to do. It does not mean in any way, shape, or form that we are a secure environment. Go look at the number of breaches that had SOC 2 compliance or ISO 27001 certifications. It's most of them. So from that perspective, is compliance security? Absolutely not. It is just that really good starting point to give you something to benchmark against. This is the minimum line. What I like to make the analogy of is go look at the minimum requirements to qualify for the Olympics. And then go look at the people who actually win the Olympics and look at the differences between those 2 numbers. And you will see they are massive margins, particularly in some of the running races. The person who finished last at the Olympics, who met the very minimum to get to the Olympics, is orders of magnitude slower than the person who won. Now, granted, they're orders of magnitude better than, I would be. But that doesn't mean that they're, the best or that they're secure. So kind of taking that perspective of getting really granular of, am I doing this for a compliance reason or am I doing this for security? Some compliance is security, but security is not necessarily compliance. There are things that we would do for security that have nothing to do with compliance because there's not a rule for it yet. AI is a great example. There are no hard and fast compliance rules for AI. So we have to kind of get to that perspective of what are we going to do before compliance becomes mandatory. Fro, great question. How do we change compliance standards so we can change it? A lot of it is getting things down to where we're able to make changes in compliance faster. CIS is doing a slightly better job than some of the other ones in iterating their standards, but it still comes down to really putting pressure on the folks in those organizations who are writing standards to get better faster on those standards. And that depends on the standard on whether it's and I'll use the example of, ISO 27001 versus a, DISA STIG. ISO 27001 will say that you need to use encryption. A DISA STIG will tell you need to use encryption and you have to go here, 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 and click these 3 boxes to comply. One is kind of you have to do this thing. The other one is very granular and says, this is exactly how you comply. Now, creating those documents to say exactly how you comply takes a lot of time. So it's easy to say, use encryption. But what does that really mean? So it's getting with our and actively participating with the organizations that are writing these standards to make them to where they're reasonable and they make sense and they're actionable. And until we engage, we're not going to see those timelines shorten. Hopefully they will, but ultimately it's on us to help make that happen. Finally, the biggest mistake I see organizations do is they try to go it alone. You know, cybersecurity is too big for any one person to absolutely be, you know, the master of everything. It is impossible. Anybody that has been in the field for any amount of time will tell you that the Dunning-Kruger effect in cybersecurity is truly real, where you get in and you're about a year in and you're like, oh my God, I know so much stuff. And then as you progress, all you're doing is you're learning all the things you don't know. And it's truly humbling and amazing to see that progression. But also it highlights that you need to bring other things into the table. There are lots of organizations out there that help make us better. You know, those standards organizations that help us create compliance standards and security configurations. You know, groups like this one that connect people both locally and throughout the area to where I know that, you know, we'll say Cade is a expert in, you know, we're going to say Python, and I'm running into a problem. I can reach out to Cade and say, all right, I'm having this problem. This is what's going on. And Cade will probably tell me, hey, dummy, you're using the wrong tilde. You're using the one that goes to the left instead of the one that goes to the right. Yes, that has actually happened to me. I used the wrong tilde. I had to use the one over the tab key, not the other one. But there are also organizations like InfoGuard that are free to join if you're a U.S. citizen that provide tons of information, ISC squared, ISACA, ISSA. If you're in a particular industry, there are tons of ISACs out there that cover pretty much everything. If you're state government, there's MS ISAC. If you are general IT, there's IT ISAC. There's a transportation ISAC, manufacturing, healthcare. There's one for everybody. If you get in and participate in those organizations, they provide a lot of great material that are unique to your particular area. You know, Discords are a great, Reddit even. You know, I can't tell you the number of things I've been able to find the answer to because I just Googled it and found a Reddit question. Somebody asked the same thing. Indeed, some ISACs do have some high membership cost. And that's where, going back to the business one, making the business case for that of look at all this stuff that they're going to be able to provide my organization, our organization, and generate that cost to benefit ratio and why it's an ROI. Sometimes it's really easy, and most of them will help you make that case, particularly for the ones that are really focused on their industry to just make it better. Affinity groups are always a great thing, whether it's, you know, groups like DEF CON, where it's how do I get in and do cool things and, you know, play with my flipper in the airport, because that's always a fun thing to do. Or, you know, doing things that are kind of more broadly focused, whether it's like a BSides or something like that. I would either confirm or deny that I have used a flipper in a casino. Just saying. So from that perspective, that's what we've typically done is, you know, a lot of the stuff that we have from a cybersecurity and IT infrastructure perspective was made by the smart guy in the room, you know, 20, 30 years ago, and has just been built on top of by whoever the next smart person in the room was. It becomes a perpetuating thing of where we build it to get the job done, not necessarily build it to get the job done in a secure manner. And we just perpetuated that. And we do that because we tend to go it alone. Like, I have to fix this problem, and I don't have other places to do. So from that perspective, leaning into these communities, whether it be on a Discord, on LinkedIn, or on a Reddit channel, any one of those millions of places that you can get support, do that, because that will just inherently make us all better. Yes, MS-ISAC does require that your organization support a state or local government agency, but you don't necessarily have to have your company's blessing to do so. You just have to have an email from your company's email account and be able to demonstrate that you have a contract with the state or local government agency, which is generally public records anyway. So, and then finally, fixing it starts with us right here, right now, this conversation. Having this conversation is a start to fixing these problems. You know, no one can fix the problem, but if you're in a hiring manager position, if you take, a couple hours tomorrow and look at your job descriptions and start rewriting them, you have made a difference. If you are a member of your company and you try to go figure out, what does your company actually do? What do the systems in your company actually support? You're moving the needle in the right direction. So from that perspective, we all can do something today, tomorrow, that helps getting the needle moved in the right direction. And if enough of us do that, these problems probably won't go away, but they will become less and less over time. So that's all I have. I'm open to any questions, and I am only 3 minutes over my allotted time. Feel free to come off mute. All right. So how did he catch our attention? Well, in his resume, he actually highlighted in the resume that he wrote custom rule sets for New York State. It's amazing how just putting what you actually did in the resume can actually resonate with somebody, particularly if it's the cool thing. Obviously with resumes, metrics are cool. I hate percentages in resume. I absolutely loathe them, because if you told me you increase compliance by 90%, well, 90% of 10 things is not the same as 90% of 10,000 things. One is significantly easier to do. So if you quantify those things as a hiring manager, that talks to me more specifically. And just be very clear on the things that you did. You don't have to write a dissertation, but when you're kind of doing your bullet points, what are the really, really cool things that you did? There are things that I'm going to know that you did if you worked in Tenable. I'm going to know that you know how to run a report. You don't need to tell me that you ran reports. Tell me the things that make you unique and interesting. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Yes, no, maybe. What else you guys got?
So, I do have a question, and my question is there a, a, a specific or standardized format for a resume,
Um,
as
I
far
would say
as far as that goes?
I wouldn't say that there's a specific or standardized format. What I will give you is kind of my cliff notes on what your resume should look like to make sure that it's getting to the right people.
Okay.
Always either in a docx or a PDF.
Okay.
No tables, no images, no funky colors, nothing that makes it pretty or can cause formatting to be ingested weird if it's uploaded into an ATS system that's going to do parsing.
Well, how about hyperlinks?
Hyperlinks are fine as long as you're describing what the hyperlink is going to.
Yeah.
So you're doing a hyperlink to your GitHub. Make sure you're labeling that it's this is my GitHub link is here, my LinkedIn profile is here.
Right. I do. Oh, okay.
And then don't use funky text or funky fonts. Make it clean, easy to read. Do bullet points.
Okay.
So that's kind of those important things to look at from those perspectives of, while it might be cool to have this really, visually stunning resume, if that gets fed into an ATS system that strips it out and all your stuff turns into, gobbledygook, that doesn't help you. One of the easy ways to do is any of the jobs that require you to apply through Workday,
Right.
just apply for a job that requires you to go through Workday and upload your resume and see how horribly hacked it gets. And if it gets, the more horribly hacked it gets, the more you need to work on your resume.
Okay. I do not like work. I do not like work a day, but okay, I understand.
Fro, I don't have anything specific other than the Microsoft programs for Purview, but I know that there are some really, really great videos on YouTube that are done by some third-party people showing how they're using Purview. And then, of course, for any of you guys, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn and send me your resume, I will absolutely review it and red ink it. Just up front, I am called the unpopular opinion guy, so that means you can't get your feelings hurt if I rip your resume to shreds. But I'll always give you reasons on why I marked it the way I marked it.
Josh, no question. Just wanted to thank you for sharing this evening. I appreciated your insight and your take on things. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, I have two questions actually.
All right.
Currently I'm studying cybersecurity at my college, and I just kind of learned about just general stuff about the field, and I'm just kind of curious. I haven't worked in IT or anything, but what is it like to work like a level 1 analyst in a SOC? Like what's the day-to-day look like?
Sure. A lot of it's going to be mind-numbingly boring.
Okay.
Not going to lie to you. You're going to stare at a screen and you're going to look at alerts and you're going to largely try to filter the wheat from the chaff. Is this a false positive or is this potentially a real alert? Depending on what kind of environment you get into, whether it's a true full tiered SOC or if it's a flat SOC, will kind of determine how much more beyond that you get. But if it's a true tiered SOC, your level ones are pretty much just going to be, is this a false positive, yes or no? If yes, close it, ticket saying it's false positive. If no, it's going to go to a tier 2 for further analysis. If you get into a good company, they will actually start doing some additional training with you, kind of give you that bigger concept of what they're looking at and prep you to move to tier 2s, but that's not always the case. Some companies spit out and chew out, level 1 analysts pretty quickly, but ultimately it's going to be a lot of reading logs. Logs are going to be the bread and butter of your day every day for, that time frame that you're working that job. And honestly, I personally go back and sit at the level 1 SOC level at least once a quarter and work a shift as a level 1 guy, just to remind myself of how boring this can be and to make sure that I can still talk the talk that I'm telling my folks.
All right, makes sense. Yeah, that's something I think I eventually would like to do. So I just wanted to get an idea what the day-to-day would look like. And so another question. So for someone again that wants to like get into this kind of stuff outside the classroom, is there any like thing you recommend to like maybe do? Like personally, I'm looking to learn like maybe Python if that would help me, into my career. Like anything like you suggest I should learn or something outside the classroom?
So kind of my biggest things is if you have an interest to learn programming, Python is a great language to learn. A lot of your cybersecurity programs have the ability to leverage Python within them, so that's always a great thing. But also do your home lab. What are you playing with? What are you building in your environment at home that is helping you figure out these new things that you might not be getting exposed to? I did drop a link to a book. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. I wrote chapter 2, which I talk about home labs a little bit, but even doing things like try hack me, hack the box, blue team level 1, those type of things can help get you in the mentality of understanding what the attacks are, how you can look at them, how you can kind of look at them from the different perspectives. I'm a big proponent that we should all strive to be purple team. It's not necessarily red versus blue, but it is easier as a defender to know what to look for if you understand how attackers work. The ultimate kind of issue with red versus blue is that a attacker has to be right one time. A defender has to be right 100% of the time and predict the 15 places where they are going to potentially have a vulnerability that they don't know about yet because it doesn't exist, and how to protect that using layers of defense. So by doing a bit of purple teaming, it helps you understand that a little bit better.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Let's Defend IO is really good as well.
I think I will add something else. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think I will add something else to the question of the SOC. And the reason why I say that is if you are, because as a neurodivergent, if you like to do puzzles, that's what you're going to be looking. You're going to be looking for needles on the haystack every day and then cleaning out what is actually a good needle and a bad needle, or what is noise or what is an actual threat. So as a SOC 1, you're going to spend time just finding needles and going down rabbit holes. But I don't know, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You got to have a passion. Although a lot of people get burned out, and it's probably one of the biggest turnover positions because 1 year, 2 years, people kind of change and try to move on to something else. It's because of that, because it's constant doing the same thing over and over and over.
I would also add that it's doing the same thing over and over again, but largely you're doing it the different same thing over and over again. Because the logs aren't all exactly the same unless you have a very well-tuned environment where you're getting the same thing over and over again. But you get to see something different pretty much every day. You're going to see at least one thing that is new and exciting. So that is and then with each new attack that comes out, there's a metric that there's like 30 new attacks that are released a day. That provides kind of just that more engagement on a mental level. So what certs would I recommend for entry-level SOC analyst? I recommend anybody that is going to do government level work to get a minimum of security plus. If you're going to be a SOC analyst, get either CYSA, which is CompTIA's version of a SOC analyst certification. If you are a fan of EC Council has one as well. And vendor certifications, whether it's, you know, a Splunk or a Devo or whatever the thing is. I look at those highly as someone who hires folks for SOCs. Even if I'm not using that product, it means that you have gone through some training, you understand at a, you know, level that how SIMs work. And by having that, you can then translate those skills from one thing to another. It's kind of like learning a programming language. Once you learn one, you can relatively easily translate from one to another because how programming works is largely the same. It's the commands that are different. And that's much the same. You know, every sim is unique, but they all fundamentally do the same end task. So understanding one helps you understand another. Yep. pfSense, Graylog, ClamAV are all good. Also look at, well, now it is level blue. It's former AT&T Cybersecurity, former Alien Vault. They have a open source SIM that is really good. And then just go and start doing. If you don't have a Raspberry Pi, go get a few and start playing with them. You know, set up a Pi hole, look at the metrics coming in from that. You know, go do cool things. You know, use one to set up a pfSense and do some additional firewall stuff. You know, just tinker with things. I'm a big proponent of eBay. I've gotten a lot of equipment off of eBay. I have in my closet in my office at home an entire rack of Cisco equipment that I learned how to do Cisco routing and switching on because I could buy them for like $50 a piece.
Do you have any tips on managing burnout and like your work-life balance? Because this is a lot of stuff that like trying to stay current is almost impossible across the whole spectrum of every technology out there.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious how you balance that.
So first things first is pick what you're truly interested in. You know, it's really easy to go, I want to learn all the things about all the things because they're all super interesting. But that's not sustainable long term. So kind of find like the one or two things that you are, you know, really interested in and focus on those. And it's okay if you spend, you know, a month learning how to program in Python and go, you know what, this really just isn't for me, and go do something else. One of the other things that I have a very passionate opinion on is schedule time off without having connected to cybersecurity stuff. Whether that is, in my case, I ride a Harley. I'm in a motorcycle club that's all ex-military. We will go and we will ride 2.5, 3 hours to go eat a burger someplace and then ride back. Do you know what I'm not doing for that, 8-hour time frame? I'm not on this. I'm not, checking my email. I'm not looking at the logs. I'm not looking at any of those other things that I would normally be doing, sitting in my house watching TV with, my iPad on my lap, scrolling through whatever the latest feed is. Schedule definitive time to disconnect and do something that you enjoy outside of cybersecurity.
Thank you.
And take your vacation. By God, take your vacation. All right, Fro, that's awesome. So for those of you who don't ride a motorcycle, it's the ultimate disconnect experience because there's literally nothing between you and death. And you're going, a speed that shall not be disclosed publicly down the road. Everyone's trying to kill you, and you can literally think of nothing else than what you're doing right then in that moment. Because if you think about anything else, you will die. So it makes it very, very easy to not think about the 12 things I have going on at work. I'm more focused on the 30 things trying to kill me. If you're not, old and broken and tubby like me, bicycles work well too for the same thing. My good friend Chris Roberts is a manic mountain biker for the same reasons. He wrecks more than I do, though, for some reason. I have kids too, and part of the expensive hobby is to get away from the kids as well, because, they're stressful too. What else you guys got?
I was going to say something, but I forgot it. It slipped my mind. Hold on.
All right. Well, if you think of it again, Cyber Greg, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to answer the question.
What is your LinkedIn? Joshua Copeland. Okay.
Yeah, I'll drop it in the group chat.
Okay.
I can verify he's a really nice guy to talk to over LinkedIn. We've had a few conversations. So.
As long as you're not a salesperson, I will answer your LinkedIn message. Try to sell me something, I'll probably tell you the 12 things wrong with your product and why I would never use it. So that is me on LinkedIn. Anything else from the group?
Have you seen any false positive alerts?
False positive alerts? Yeah, all the time. I am a proponent that if you're not at least occasionally getting false positive alerts, you probably have your environment tuned too tightly and you're missing, true alerts that probably are getting tuned out. It's always kind of the edge that you have to play with of, how tightly do you tune your alerts to limit the amount of false positives to eliminate needless work, but how loose do you leave it so you can catch these things that you might not have caught otherwise?
And how about false negatives?
Yeah, false negatives happen too all the time. And that's kind of one of those situations that largely occurs with new threat vectors, or when you're seeing threat actors using tools that what they call are living off the land. They're using things that are already in the environment. So like if TeamViewer is something that is normal in that environment and somebody else is using that nefariously, I might see that as a, perfectly normal and benign activity when it's not, just because it is considered normal in my environment. And that's one of those, fine edge things where you've got to look at it of, okay, what does normal really look like, and building your baselines around that.
And how often do you use the user entity behavior, the UEBA? Yeah.
So looking at what user behavior analytics,
Yeah.
I think that's actually, if you're using a SIM tool that doesn't have user behavior analytics, you're missing the mark. That's kind of the thing that you really need to focus in on, because that is your biggest vector into your environment. And looking at things like impossible travel and unusual logins, logins after their normal shift hours, accessing things that they don't normally access, is where you're going to eventually start catching a lot more things.
Okay. I will hold right there and let other people ask questions.
Right.
All right. I think, did everybody have their questions answered? All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you so much, Joshua, for agreeing to speak with us tonight and joining us for our very first meeting.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful. And if anybody wants to just socialize, we have voice channels in our Discord, so feel free to hop on there if you still want to keep things going. So nice to have you, Joshua, and thank you, everybody.
All right.
Hey,
Yeah,
Joshua, the link for
Awesome.
the LinkedIn link is broken.
For Joshua?
Yeah, I keep getting 404.
Did you
I'm
type it
sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Okay. You should be able to look him up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how I found him.
Okay.
I just typed in his name.
I promise you I'm real.
I hope we're not talking to an AI. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just look up Joshua Copeland. Thank you, Steve.
Like, you'll see my ugly mug and my rants. I'll try this again.
Got it. I got it.
I think there was a dot in the previous one. Yeah. So, okay, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Well, you all have a wonderful night.
Thanks, you too.
I do have one more question.
All right.
Oh.
And my question is, besides Splunk, what would you say is the top seam to learn?
Right now, I would say if I were to recommend anybody learn any individual SIMs, it'd be Splunk, Elk Stack, and Azure Sentinel.
Okay. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
All right. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Take care.
Have a
Bye,
good
Rob.
day.
Thanks. Bye.